Happy New Year, friends. It's 2021. Woo! And we are back and better than ever. For those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Jessica and I am the J and MJD in NYC. And today I want to talk about something quite exciting. As some of you might know, I actually applied to university in the United States in 2016, so it's been a little while. I was looking into colleges. I had just moved to the US recently. My college and university applying process was as an international student, and I did find some differences, especially now that I know how the system works in general and how it was for my fellow classmates. The fact that I was an international student, it really kind of made the whole experience very different for me, and it had a lot of challenges as well. So I thought I would have a quick chat about it. I have some notes here. I wanted to share those with you because I know some of you might be thinking about coming to the US for college, so yeah, I think these might be helpful. I actually also asked on Instagram if any of you followers had any questions about this, and I got some queries. I'll address those as well. Also, I recommend that if you want to stay updated with our future videos and posts, you follow us on Instagram. So for me, a big question when I started looking into schools was, how do I figure out which schools are for me? There are so many colleges and universities in the United States and the world in general, so it's definitely hard to kind of filter out and decide which ones you want. So number one, it was location, so the state, based on like weather and how close it was to my family and like how close it was to like near airports and stuff like that. Then I also did by major. So there are a lot of college rankings in the US. They are pretty popular. Some of them are kind of like not super accurate, but what I did is that I looked at the college ratings for my major specifically. So I knew I wanted to go into computer science. Actually, when I was applying, I looked into computer science and marketing. So I knew that that was kind of what I wanted to look at. So I looked at like best schools in the US for computer science, and I look at the top 25, and then from there I filter for location, and then if it was like a public school or a private school, I looked into the financials as well, and that helped filter out my decision of which schools I wanted to go. The thing I would highly recommend is that if you are even a little bit interested in applying to schools in the United States, is that you start very early. The process itself for students in the United States does start quite early. I think you have to apply by like the end of the semester before. So usually you start school in like the summer. So you start in, I think it started in August or September of 2016, and I started applying in 2015. So I would say start applying as early as possible and start getting all of your research done early in the year. So if you want to go to school in like 2022, this is a perfect time to start your research and start looking into like what schools you're going to apply to, what you do need to get for those schools, especially if you are outside of the US and you need to get a visa. Different countries have different standards, so you definitely want to look into that. Another tip I have is to find a counselor. It could be someone that lives and works in the US and you can find them online and probably get counseling online, or it could be someone that lives in your country that is experienced with helping people apply to colleges in other countries. For me, I went to high school here in the US for 2 years before I went to college as an international student, so I had a counselor that was assigned to me at my school, but she actually didn't have a lot of experience with helping international students because she was like used to working with kids that already lived here. So we had to work together to like do a lot of research, and she got like information from her friends who were counselors as well, help me apply to colleges because it's totally different. Some of the things that you might hear about to apply to colleges are like the standardized tests that you need to take, and other prerequisite tests that you need. When I applied to school, you had to do the SAT or ACT. Some schools you have waivers for these for international students, and because it could be complicated for you to take these tests in a different country. They don't have as many testing locations, but if you can, I highly recommend you do take them. I also took AP exams, but that was because it was offered to me. So I'm not sure how that would work if you wanted to go to like an international, like a bilingual or international school in your country, maybe they offer AP exams. But for the SAT and the SAT, I think there is no really like big difference in the exam itself if you're an international student, but they are quite different in the way that they're structured to exams that I've taken in schools in other countries. So I would just say like do really focus on those and take time to study for those, because it is quite different and it's a very specific type of test. Ask whoever is helping you, like the counselor or anything, to see if they have any courses that you could find online. Or I don't remember, I did a lot of like YouTube tutorials on how to study for my SAT and ACT. There's a lot of free material online, and you also can find like courses that you can take that you can pay for online. So with that, I want to jump into like the college board situation. So they have an online portal, and I'm pretty sure you have to create an account when you take your SAT or you schedule your SAT. Or basically, they have a lot of information regarding colleges and universities in the United States. They have rankings, they have like quizzes that you can take to see like which major would be a match for you and stuff like that. It was really helpful. When you are thinking about going to the United States for college, I would highly recommend that you take a really big look at the finances, because even when you go into like the school's webpage and they say like tuition, fees, whatever, and like how much it would cost you to go here for a year or for 4 years, that is actually not all the cost that you're gonna have to take in order to get into that school. That's just like their estimate for how much it would be for you to like live and study there. But there is a lot of costs that I don't think it's included there when you're applying to the schools. So the SAT, the ACT, and the AP exams all have fees for you to take them, and if you have to take them multiple times, or you want to take them multiple times, you have to pay for them as well. I know in the US there are some waivers that your school may give you for like your first SAT or something, but those don't apply to international students, I think. So you account for those in your budget. Same goes for applications. So a lot of schools go through the Common App, which is just like your common application. They have a bunch of questions and you fill them out, like your essay questions and such. Part of the application is probably one of the hardest parts of the application in my opinion. I think Margaret and Diana have talked about their essays and their Common App and such in other videos, so feel free to check the channel for more info on those. I do think that in some schools the application for international students, it's quite different. They might have different questions for you. You might want to also get guidance on this, so that's why I recommended a counselor to help you through this, because the essays do have like a specific format, and there are certain tips that will help you, and they will be able to help you review your essay for you, like read it over and like recommend certain things to you. Some schools also request letters of recommendation from your teachers, your guidance counselor, anyone that can vouch for kind of your dedication to school. Also, when you're applying to schools, either through the Common App or through their independent websites, there are specific fees to apply for each school, and these can range from like $10 to like $100, $150. At least that's how it was when I applied, and I always thought it was so unfair because my application fee was always so much more expensive than the ones that were for residents, which I guess makes sense, part of like the whole system and how it works. But do account for that, like even applying to one school can be quite expensive between test fees and application fees. Also have different timelines and due dates for your applications and your essay. Make sure that you double check with the schools that you're applying to make sure that you get those applications in for the right to look at. And I probably should have at the beginning. Basically, you could get financial aid from the government, like grants, or you could get loan through FAFSA. However, if you're an international student, you do not qualify for these. Have different options. You could find scholarships at your local, like at your country where you're from. Maybe like some states or schools or organizations will provide scholarships for you to go to school outside of your country, so you could use these here in the US. You could look at like private loans, or a lot of schools do have like specific funds for international students, scholarships that are by the school or by organizations associated with the school that will give you a scholarship even if you're an international student. So you have to do your research. There are some scholarships that like do apply for international students, but there are not as many as there are for like residents. So for instance, my school had a grant for international students and I was able to get that one, but otherwise I didn't get any financial aid for my first year of school. One of my top schools that I really wanted to go to, I ended up not going, just because even though I was accepted, they didn't offer any financial aid at all for international students, and it was very expensive. So I think I should have looked at that earlier, and then I wouldn't have been disappointed at the end when I found out that they didn't offer financial aid. But yeah, that's my tip. Kind of make sure that before you apply, or when you are applying, like, do contact the school and see what options they have for international students, and if that's an issue, that you are aware of it in advance. Another extra requirement that you might have as an international student from school to school, ask you to take a TOEFL. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. I think it is. I'm going to pronounce it TOEFL, but if you know what I mean, it's the TOEFL exam. So basically it is an exam to prove efficiency of the English language. So it's to kind of show that you are able to speak English in a level that it's appropriate for you to be able to go to school and like survive. Because I took the ACT and the ACT and AP exams, and I got a decent English side of reading and writing for the ACT. Most of my schools didn't require me to take the TOEFL, so I didn't necessarily have to for a lot of the schools. But there was one school that didn't take SAT scores as enough to prove that you know how to speak English, because the SAT scores are writing and reading, and the TOEFL actually includes a part that is for listening and speech, so you have to actually talk in the exam. It's this whole thing. Of that, if you are from a non-English speaking country, you might be required to take this exam, and that is an extra fee. That one is actually quite expensive, I think, from what I remember. And I know there are a lot of materials out there for the exam as well for you to practice, and double check on that and account for that in your financial and your timeline as well, because you need to get those results before the school can finalize your application. Last but not least, are some documents and some paperwork that you might have to translate if you are not from an English speaking country. So I know that for me, I had to get my vaccine records, translate them, send them to the school. I had to get my official transcripts from my previous school and get them translated as well. If you took any exams or any type of documents that you need to send, they need to be translated. Even financial documents. I know that for me, when I applied to college, I had to have proof of financial capacity to afford paying the school. I think it's for 1 year. I think some schools require that it's more than 1 year. I think some schools require that you have enough to pay for the whole 4 years. Some schools do say it's enough to only have 2. But basically you do have to provide your bank records and financial documents that prove that you could afford the school. So those need to get translated, and it takes some time. So also take those into consideration in your timeline. And yeah. So now that I talked about all of the extra stuff you have to do as an international student, I also wanted to talk about some of the really cool things you get as an international student in the US. Aside from all of the obvious and the cultural exposure and perspective and great opportunities to learn here, you have to pay much higher tuition as an international student. So just be aware of that. The prices of the tuition and fees are going to be larger because you are an international student, but there are some perks to it. So I know my school had an international student alumni association and an international student association in general. So I got to move in early to campus because I was an international student, so you have a longer rotation, a lot of events for you and your family. They give you more time to kind of go all the way to the school and settled and moved in, and you probably are gonna have to buy a lot of stuff because you can't just like move it on your car, like unless you live across the border or something, but you're probably gonna have to fly in and everything. So I know my school, I didn't realize this, but it was like an hour or two away from the airport, and I had to take a taxi every time I flew in, and that was like the local international airport. So you might want to check what's the nearest international airport as well, because I have some friends that would have to take like 4-hour taxi drive every time they had to go to the school from the international airport. So just be aware of that. To move in early, which usually people have to pay a fee for that. If they want to do that, you get extra orientation days, and I mean every school has different things for the international students. It's kind of cool, you get some perks. So that was my experience applying to schools as an international student. Definitely think my experience studying here in the United States was a fantastic one. Loved every second of it, and I did find a lot of the tools that they were provided to me as an international student on my first year really helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, send us an email, or reach out to us on our Instagram. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and like if you enjoyed. So thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year.